Welcome to the Essentially You podcast. Dr. Sharon, honey, how are you doing today, girl?
I am doing great. I am super excited to be here with you and have this conversation. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, what I'm super excited to talk about, Dr. Stills, is how we are going to show everyone listening today how we can be red hot sexy throughout this menopause transition and beyond. And, the first person I think of, because I literally just watched her docuseries on Netflix, and probably one of my favorite sheroes of all times is J-Lo, Jennifer Lopez. And just watching that documentary, I'm not sure if you've seen it, it's called Halftime.
Not yet, but
Okay.
It's on my to-do list.
Oh my, it is so good. And I will tell you what, it fired me so up for the possibility, not only just like how you can look so good, moving into your 50s and beyond, but also like how you can be. One of the things she says in it is she's like, I'm just getting started. I'm just getting 51. I think she turns 52 this year. And she's like, I'm just getting started. And I really love that mindset. And so I want to hear a little bit about how you feel about the I'm just getting started mindset at 50 years old.
Oh my God. I feel I'm 54 years old and I feel like I am in this new chapter and I am just getting started. And I think it is such a powerful time. Often I'm just walking or driving and I'm by myself and I just have this moment like sink into me that I am so settled. I am really feeling good about who I am. I don't really care about what other people are thinking or what someone may have said or what I may not have said or what I did or didn't do. I just feel really grateful to be alive. I feel grateful to be happy. I feel grateful to feel content. And I feel grateful that I'm not in my 20s and 30s anymore.
And why is that? Tell me a little bit about that.
I think my 20s and 30s, I was very involved in still working a lot of my issues and my inner child issues. And I still got a real rise from trauma and drama. I grew up in a very chaotic family system. And so that kind of felt comfortable to me, having drama and chaos. And so I have learned that that doesn't need to be my comfort place, that peace can be my comfort place. I feel like my health, because I didn't even get really involved with natural medicine till I was about 24, 25. I had already had 2 boys when I was younger. So they were like 3 and 5 already. And I got divorced. And it was when I went on my journey to become a physician and I went through Oriental medical massage school and I did iridology and I became a nutritionist. I became a colon hydrotherapist. I was just obsessed with natural healing, but I hadn't really embodied it all yet. So I was still struggling back then. I was a very unhealthy vegan. I wasn't getting my periods. I literally would get so bloated that people would ask me when my baby was due. And it was so just embarrassing and humiliating to be asked that and be like, that's just my bloat. I don't have a baby coming. These are my children. They're already here. And so I really struggled. I was one of those women who had premenstrual symptoms pretty much like for 2 weeks. And then I would have my period for a week and suffer. And then I would have 6 or 7 days after my period where I felt some sort of human. And then it would just start all over again. So back then I wasn't settled emotionally. I wasn't settled physically. And so I don't want to go back there. I didn't feel like I was enough. I made choices from the wrong places. So now in my 50s, I am like, yes, have done so much healing and I am just getting started. And I call menopause the sacred second act. And I don't mean second act, like second act and we're done. I see it as the middle act. I see the first act of raising children and being fertile and all of those things as a beautiful act. And I'm saying I don't wish going back there, but I loved the journey. I wouldn't change the journey. But then you get to menopause and you're embodied as a woman and you're not dealing with the cyclical ups and downs of hormones. And we are living so much longer. So it's not like we used to have a lifespan of 40 or 45, and we didn't spend much time or any time in menopause. Now we're living into our 80s, 90s. I actually plan on living to 130. And sometimes people laugh at me when I say that, but we are really biologically designed to last that long. So it's not like, oh, Dr. Stills is insane and she thinks she's going to live so long. If you take care of yourself and do the right things, it's very possible to live to 110, 120, 130 and live with good health and grace and ease and mind and all of that. I don't want to live and not be feeling good. And so I kind of feel the second act of menopause is where we really are on fire. I'm creating new businesses and doing all these things and just having the time of my life. And then I think the third and final act in my hundreds will be where I sit on the patio and I just rock on my rocking chair and I have a cup of tea and I smell the flowers and maybe chat with some friends and let myself wind down. But this time now, there's so much creativity bursting when you're in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, beyond that. I see it as three acts, and menopause is the most powerful one.
I love that so much. I love the breakdown. I love you sharing your journey. And I love where you're like, the journey, I learned so much from it. I overcame the drama. I overcame the trauma. I overcame the physical ailments. I sauntered through perimenopause, and I want to talk a little bit about that transition in just a second. And now I am in this new sacred second act, and I'm really owning it. And so that's literally the conversation I want to have. But I know that, the mindset is such a big piece of this, but it also is the physicality. And so often, I know women, we have big dreams and we have big visions for what we want. And sometimes our bodies are like not keeping up with how we're feeling, especially as you mentioned, we're just living a lot longer. And I feel like we kind of stopped studying women after menopause. So there's, and mind you, there's a lot of things that we know and we're going to have that conversation right now, but I can understand why women are feeling like, how do I move into this next phase? How do I ensure my health in this next phase? A study just came out really demonstrating that once we lose those sex hormones, our propensity for cardiovascular disease is quite high. And so that over 50% of us are dying of cardiovascular related diseases. And so I would love to really speak into, I know we're going to get into bioidentical hormones and all the things that can keep us going, because let me tell you, everything is on the table as far as I'm concerned when it comes to keeping us vital, having our brain firing on all cylinders, just having us feel great moving into, all the decades. And so I want to spend a little bit of time in perimenopause because that's where I feel like we really have that opportunity to pivot. Things can go one way or the other. And not to say that at any point in time can we try to pivot, but I would say there are definitely optimal times for pivoting as we move into this second chapter.
I love that word, pivot. I feel like that's a book, Pivot Through Perimenopause. But I always say pregame. And so that was my personal experience. So when I graduated from Naturopathic Medical School, I was in my very early 30s. So menopause was furthest thing from my mind, but it was just when Suzanne Summers had written her first book and had brought bioidentical hormones to the general consciousness. And I had a patient come in who kind of put the book down and said, I want this. And I said, let me read the book. I was a little confused that Chrissy from Three's Company was going to dictate what I was going to do medically, but I have an open mind. So I was like, let me borrow the book for a week. And I read it and I thought, wow, this is naturopathic medicine. And I can even add on to it with my training and what I know. And so I started, all of a sudden, I treated her, she told her friend, and before I knew it, it just blew up. I had this huge practice prescribing bioidentical hormones and helping women transition through menopause. And then I said to myself, because I know if you're listening, and like Dr. Mariza was saying, if you're like, I want to do that, but my body's not letting me, that's how I was. I was still struggling with the PMS and all of that. And I thought, one of my philosophies of being a naturopathic doctor is physician heal thyself and practice what I preach. And so I thought, maybe I should look at these hormones for me and even though I'm not in menopause, but for my premenstrual issues. And so I started treating myself. And all of a sudden I didn't have hormone issues. And it was like, ta-da! My life was just a whole new experience of not having to go through the ups and downs and the cravings and the bloating and the breast tenderness and the depression and the anxiety and all of the sleeplessness, all these things I was dealing with. And so because I did that early, when I went through menopause and I was done with menopause, I was a little on the earlier side. I was 48, but I never even had a hot flash. There was like this one moment where I felt hot and I was like, is that a hot flash? And I was like, I don't think that is a hot flash. So I just flew through it and felt so good because I pre-gamed. And so for everyone listening, if you are in that age range, so if you're having hormonal symptoms at any age, getting that balanced is going to help you on your hormonal journey through perimenopause. But if you are in that age range of even as early as your early 30s and you're having symptoms, it is very likely that some kind of hormonal imbalance, especially with all the environmental toxins we are exposed to these days and the stresses we're under, both chemically and physically and emotionally. We used to not think of perimenopause so early, but I see it, as I'm sure you do, that it can be earlier than
Oh
what the
yeah.
textbook would say.
It's
And
definitely earlier than what the textbooks say. And it's a bummer because a lot of women are dismissed in the doctor's office because they're like, I think this is perimenopause. And they're just like, no, you don't fit the age description. And I'm just like,
so I think you really have to go outside the box if you're looking for help with your hormones, because even your traditional gynecologist, they just don't have the understanding. It's not in their training. I'm sure if it was in their training, they would love to help you, but when you're taught something, that's all you know, unless you go look elsewhere. And so it's really important that you start working on these things, because then your hormonal transition can be a beautiful experience, and it doesn't have to be full of symptoms and sleepless nights and fat gain and things of that nature. And so pre-gaming prevention is always the answer. It's funny, I was in Salt Lake City this past weekend and they had this row of signs up and they were all opposites, light, dark. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then they had prevention and cure being opposites. And I thought, that's so weird. Prevention is definitely not the opposite of cure. Prevention is the cure. And so we always need to be involved and pivoting to what can we be doing to empower ourselves and take control of our health and our hormones.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I want to just share a little bit about when I think about hormonal imbalances, I'm always really interested in the root cause. But I also know that sometimes like digging into the root cause and really working on the liver and tuning the gut in and being, creating metabolic flexibility and reducing cortisol, like getting cortisol to a really nice place where you've healed your trauma. You know what I'm saying? Like you talk about it's a lot of work. Let's just say it's stacking on stacking on stacking. And, I was thinking about my own journey. Lots of trauma in my 20s, definitely running from trauma and running in survival mode that led to a lot of hormone issues. I mean, you can only run your body down so much until what I call the frontline hormones are like, enough is enough. Like we can't take this anymore. What I would consider to be menopausal levels of progesterone, which I see a lot. And I had worked a really long time trying to get them back and get them to a robust place until finally, because I knew I wanted to have a baby at some point. I was like, well, the pregnancy hormone that maintains pregnancy is progesterone. So I got to do something different about this. Ultimately, I got pregnant, but then had a miscarriage, a couple months, 2 months later. And, when we looked again, progesterone it was not where I needed to be. Initially, we thought it was going to be enough. So I ended up supplementing with progesterone, natural progesterone to get pregnant. And I stayed on that progesterone until month 16 of my pregnancy. And so, I think about like, yes, that I want to get to the root cause, and yes, that I want to boost progesterone levels in a way where I didn't necessarily need bioidenticals at the age of 39 or 40. But ultimately, thank goodness it was there, because it was the thing that I really needed to kind of get over the hump for my particular instance of getting pregnant. So I was so grateful for having a bioidentical hormone that I could lend to. And so I, just curious, Dr. Stills, like how much do we like lean on getting to the root cause of what it is, and then also lean on the hormones at the same time, right? Because that's always my conversation of like, we've got to, if it's insulin resistance that's causing a lot of these issues, right? Is it beneficial to add estrogen to the mix to kind of create more sensitivity, or should we work on the insulin resistance problem?
Good question. Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge you and your journey and your loss, and that you didn't give up. And I know you have a beautiful baby boy now.
Cute.
and it makes me think of all the women over the years who I have also helped to get pregnant and maintain a pregnancy, and often progesterone, thyroid hormone is the thing that gets them there. And we have all these little naturopathic babies around. It's one of the funnest parts of my job, is helping women to have babies when they want to become mothers. And so yes, I think the root cause versus supporting it, really, I'm always about looking for the root, but sometimes in a situation, just like you said, we're going to give the progesterone, even if the body should be pumping it out on its own. And so we can have our solution while we are going back and doing all of the root cause things, which go from diet and sleep and exercise and toxicity and stress levels and emotions and all these things that play in. And so when I evaluate a patient, to me, it's very easy to balance someone's hormones and give them the hormones they need and have them see results and feel better. But when I work with patients, I'm kind of like, well, I'll do that for you, but we're going to handshake and you're going to commit to doing the work so that you have a healthy body and you have a healthy terrain for which these external, exogenous, yet bioidentical hormones can land in your body. And so I run a tight ship, and and I won't refill patients' hormones if they're not doing their work, because I feel like the foundation is how we heal and how we live our life and how we eat and how we sleep and how we interact. And we don't want to ignore those things, because then we're just band-aiding. Then we're just doing like green allopathic medicine. So we're giving you something that's natural, but we're not really looking at your lifestyle and the root cause. And so I evaluate a patient immediately looking at just what are blockages that are preventing them from healing. And these blockages often start in the mouth. And so whether it be root canals or amalgam fillings or galvanicity, which is an electrical charge because you have too many metals in your mouth, or cavitations, which are infections in the bone. The mouth is the beginning of our digestive tract, and the mouth is where so many blockages. Each tooth is related to a meridian, so it has effect on our organs, be it our liver or small intestine or our breast health. And so I'm always, it's like people like, aren't you a doctor? And I'm like, yes, but I'm a doctor who wants to help you feel better. We have to look at the mouth. I look at scars on the body, which can be causing blockages, again, among the meridians in the autonomic nervous system. They can be causing emotional blockages. I'm looking at external Wi-Fi and EMFs, because those are really crushing us and hurting our health. And so a lot of the things we can't see are affecting us greatly. And I like to remind patients that we have to pay attention to the invisible, because the invisible is profound. I'm certainly looking at emotions. Our emotions and our trauma are a huge part of how we go through the world and how we go through our healing journey. And so to me, what you're doing, what you're eating, what you're taking is super important. But a step behind that, what's even more important is who you are when you're doing it, how you're doing it, the energy with which you're doing it. If you're eating organic broccoli and you're super stressed out and I have to eat this organic broccoli and I got to be healthy, but you haven't really unwound your health and your journey and why you're so stressed, then that organic broccoli is not going to get integrated into your system. And other things that I look at are certainly your liver. You can't really look at hormone health if you're not paying attention to the liver, the place where they get metabolized and detox. I look at the gut, because the gut is super important. I look at toxicity levels, because if we are toxic, for example, mercury loves to attack the thyroid. And so a lot of times Hashimoto's, the underlying root cause can be a mercury toxicity. And so we can't really heal our hormones if we have metals, and nowadays it's pesticides and it's herbicides and it's plastic, and it's just goes on and on the list of toxins we are exposed to. And I look strongly at the lymphatic system, because the lymphatic system is our immune system. It's where we detox and where we cleanse the cells. And so the lymphatic system is intimately related to our breast health. And we don't pay enough attention to breast health. A lot of time we just think, oh, when I'm 50 or whatever the age they tell you now, I'm going to go get my mammogram. But our breasts are lymphatic tissue and can hold on to so much toxic materials if we are not consciously draining and moving our lymph. Our lymph doesn't move unless we move. And our lymph, from a psychospiritual perspective, our lymph is our emotions. Our lymph is the subconscious. And so if we don't want to deal with things, like an easy example is a child who's has a lot of ear infections. Often it's they don't want to hear what's going on. They're in a house where there's a lot of chaos or fighting. And so our lymphatic system, when our lymphatic system slows down and gets stuck, we don't want to deal with the deep emotions. We don't want to deal with the betrayal we had or the disappointment we had. And so our lymph just stagnates. And so we have to move our emotions. We have to physically move our lymph so we can be draining and our hormones can be detoxing. Progesterone moves through the lymph. It's how it's distributed to cells. And so there's so much that goes into, I wish it was just here's your bioidentical hormones and you can go on your way.
Well, Dr. Sharon, we're gonna want some of the simpler, because I mean, we're talking about that is some deep, deep, deep work. I mean, just the trauma work alone. You think about, so many people aren't necessarily going to go and run a heavy metal panel. Some will, some won't. And so I'm always really, yeah, the Suzanne Summers book, I remember that book came out, and a lot of women are looking for, that's what we think. We're like, we need the hormones. And you and I both know that, man, the brain loves estrogen and progesterone. The heart does too, and the bones do. And so, there is a time and place. I just like you, I always want to be mindful of, we don't want to treat this as another Band-Aid when there could be these underlying causes, as you mentioned. And not even just that. I mean, for me, I look so much at just the food that we're consuming. Are we on a blood sugar roller coaster? I mean, I know for me, I've been sharing this a lot recently, that 20s and some of my 30s, I was just chasing a sugar crash. I just had no idea. I was like, man, I just need more energy right now. And little did I know, I was literally just on a perpetual, one ticket, never getting off the roller coaster that just kept going around and around and around. And so I know that's playing a lot of role in why our gut and our liver and our energy levels are struggling, literally what we're putting into our bodies every single day. And so given the lymphatic system, thank goodness we have bioidentical hormones that we can use, given the importance of a metabolically healthy meal, one that takes into account the liver and the gut and blood sugar and your cells, what do you recommend let's get back to the red hot and sexy, let's get back to that. How do you recommend we even begin to go about getting to the red hot and sexy if we're not able to work with you? If we were just like, okay, we're going through this, we know that our primary is definitely not going to have the answers we're looking for. Potentially our gyno is not either, because it's just not the training that they got. And so we're trying to navigate this, right? Thank goodness there's books out there, and thank goodness there's conversations like this and in your event as well. But where do you recommend that we even begin to start? Is it food? Is it the lymphatics?
Well, I definitely think, and that's why it's funny. That's why I created Red as a brand, because I thought, what are the things that anyone can do if they're not working with me that are still going to give them a huge bang and a huge movement towards health? And so the way I did it was I broke it down where Red is all about reinventing your health. And although I believe that a lot of things we're dealing with start in the energetic field, start in the emotions, and then move in and become physical, I approach patients the opposite way, because it's hard to even go down that path if you haven't found out, is your thyroid optimal? Do you have enough zinc? Is your liver detoxing? Do you have enough vitamin D? So just basic things can sometimes really help you. Like we mentioned in the very beginning, I want to be amazing, but I don't feel good. So basic things like getting a full blood panel and looking at what your nutrients are, making sure you're getting enough sleep. And if you're not sleeping, putting that as a priority. So it's easy to say, okay, everyone listening, make sure you're getting enough sleep. But if that's not something that comes easy to you, then looking at why you're not sleeping. Often, if your cortisol levels are high at night, you will have a hard time falling asleep, and taking something like melatonin or phosphatidylserine can help temper those levels and allow you to fall asleep. If you fall asleep and you don't stay asleep, often that's the opposite. Often that means you are hypoadrenal, you don't produce enough cortisol, and then supporting your adrenals with glandulars, with herbs such as glycyrrhiza, ashwagandha, eleutherococcus, rhodiola can really help you to have more energy during the day so that you can fall asleep at night. Making sure you're in rhythm with nature, with Mother Nature, with the outside. So I remember long time ago, when I was in medical school, we had to write a paper on what our favorite supplement was. This is like back in 1997. And I wrote a paper on the sun. And everyone was like, I was in naturopathic school, so they understood, they let it slide. But utilizing the sun, we've been taught to be so afraid of the sun, that the sun is bad, and cover up and put toxic sunscreen on you. But the sun is healing. So getting morning sun when you wake up, within the first hour of waking up, if you can't get outside, even just standing by a window is better than nothing. Getting a little bit of daytime sun when the sun is at its apex, 15, 20 minutes, to build some vitamin D and to get the warmth and the healing nature of the sun, and then watching the sunset. And when the sun sets, I always have a ritual of, when the sun sets, I give what no longer serves me to the setting sun. And I give it away into the west. And then the candles come on, the phones go away, and start to wind down, because that helps you get in relationship with nature, with the circadian rhythm, rather than pushing yourself and staying up and getting the blue lights and then missing that. How many of you feel tired? I hear this all the time from my patients. I'm sure you do too. Well, I have a hard time going to sleep. I usually don't get to bed till 12:30. I do feel tired at 9:30, but I push through it. And I'm like, no, that's a good time to go to sleep. And so a lot of it is mindset. It's thinking about what is our priorities. To me, sleep is a priority. So if I have a desk full of stuff and a sink full of dishes, and the sun is set and it's time for me to start winding down, I kind of go into triage mode. And if I'm not going to have time to wash the dishes, I might just throw a little soap and put some water in, so the next day I'm not dealing with caked on food that's hard to scrub off. But I don't put my sleep behind to-do list or chores or emails or even a TV show. When I was growing up, we didn't have DVRs. We didn't have, I remember
Netflix. No
Netflix.
Yes.
You would you would get a disc in the mail, and then you had to like mail it back. And so it's very easy to get sucked in, but always having this mindfulness and this knowing that your health and your decisions and your lifestyle should be priority, because that's how we grow health. That's how we start to create a body. Whether you see me or any doctor, you have the power to hydrate, to make sure water becomes, I don't know if a job is the best word to use, but to me, water is an event that needs to take place. And I fill up bottles and I measure it out, and I know I'm going to get through 3 of these bottles, and I'm visually looking at them, because I don't want to get through them before bedtime and be up all night peeing. I want my water job to be done by about 6 o'clock. And so there are so many things. When I first developed Red, it was eating healthy, eating enough protein. if you are chasing the sugar, the cravings, often you could be magnesium deficient, you could be protein deficient. So really getting into a feeding window where you're only eating from 10 to 6. So you're giving your body that time to digest and rest and go into the parasympathetic mode as you're sleeping. We don't heal if we're stressed. And so when I say who you're being, if you are chronically stressed, which so many of us are, and I understand, I have been there, and it's been the work of my life to unravel that and undo that so I can help lead other women in that. But if you are going to yoga class and it's being stuck in and you're stressed because you got to get out of there and you don't have time to lay in shavasana at the end, maybe better to skip the yoga class and instead of an hour, carve out 15 minutes where you can just be breathing or doing some stretching, not stressing, where it's not stressing, where it's not stressing you out, because we cram our schedules. And one of the things I feel that as women, when we go through this menopause journey, we're in a different space in our life. And so we have more time. When I was younger and I was a single mom raising two little rugrats who were 20 months apart and loved to cause chaos, two little boys, and I was putting myself through medical school, I didn't have the time freedom that I have now that I am so grateful for, but I prioritized what did I need? What are my non-negotiables? So if you live a very hectic life and you have a spouse and kids and a job and aging parents, I invite you to just think about what are the non-negotiables. For me, it was meditating at least a half hour a day. It was getting at least a half hour of some kind of aerobic exercise just to move the energy. And it was making sure I got 8 hours of sleep. And so it was like for while I was going through medical school, and of course, eating healthy and staying hydrated. But those were like the external things I did for myself. I made sure I got to the Zendo. I made sure I got to the gym at the apartment we lived in. And I made sure my kids knew that once I used to go to bed really early back then because I had to adjust my schedule. So they knew once 8:30 rolled around, you only better come get me if there's an emergency, if you're hurt or the house is burning down. Otherwise, mom is off limits and I'm sleeping, and go to bed and do your thing. And so I think we need to look at where we are in our life and what can we fit in that makes us exhale rather than makes us feel stressed. Oh, now I got to get to the gym. Oh, now I got to get this, instead of saying, this is my half hour and I'm going to relish it. I'm going to be in it. I'm going to enjoy it. And then I'm going to go do all the other things I have to do, knowing that this is just a season of my life.
Mm. I think that's so powerful. There was so much I was taking away from that. I love that you brought up the circadian rhythm of our bodies and, and getting out in nature to help recharge those mitochondria. I also think eating within, like you talked about, that smaller window, I know we're more insulin resistant in the evening because it's a part of our circadian rhythm. And so thinking about eating earlier, and what are the non-negotiables? Like, what are the non-negotiables for you right now? I know there's a lot of moms and parents or moms listening or women listening, and, kids go to bed at a certain time and you only have like this window where it's your only time. And it's no wonder people are squeezing till 12 o'clock. I know I am always negotiating with myself because Kingston goes down at 7:15. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is so nice. And not that I didn't love my time with him, but it's just a different kind of time. And so my husband is definitely the 12:30 guy. Like, and he woke up this morning and he's like, I feels like we're back when he was really young. And I was like, I'm just going to suggest going to bed earlier. I'm just saying. I went to bed at I think 9:45 last night because I knew, because my alarm clock is my son. No matter, it seems like the later I go to bed, the earlier he gets up. How that works. So,
of course.
and so I think, the non-negotiable is so important here because we can totally out talk ourselves out of, going to bed earlier or, not taking a walk or whatever, or not getting enough sun. And so, getting clear on those non-negotiables for you and where you are in your journey is so, so important.
One of the things I always tell patients and utilize is your calendar. if you think about the things that are non-negotiable, or if you know that you're going to go to bed at 10 every night and you're going to sleep till 6, and then just like having that in there, because if we put in our calendar, we have a doctor's appointment or we have to be at work at 3, that happens. So if we start training ourselves that, oh, bedtime is a commitment to myself, and oh, it's in my calendar, it's going to happen. And then we start to build our life around, oh, I'm going to go to 3 yoga classes a week, or whatever, Pilates or whatever it is, or I'm going to go for that run on the beach or go lift some weights. If we start to make it important enough to enter into the calendar and to be on the calendar, we can start to really commit and make it happen, rather than it's just kind of floating out there and I should do it, and then everything else takes precedence, and oh, I'll do it tomorrow. And really knowing yourself. Like, I am a morning person. So when I was in the craziest, busiest time of my life, raising the kids and going through medical school and so forth, I went to bed about 8:30 and got up at 4:30, because I knew in the morning that was my optimal time to meditate. That was when I was going to get my workout in. I'm the kind of person, if I've gone through a day and then it's time to work out, I'm probably too tired and I'm not going to do it. So I knew that about myself. That doesn't mean that's who you are, but it's important to kind of check in and see who you are. And the sleeping later, even if you get enough hours, it unfortunately, it doesn't work out the same physiologically because of our circadian rhythms and because of how our hormones are. So traditional Chinese medicine teaches every hour before midnight is equivalent to about 4 hours after midnight. And so those hours before midnight are really, really gold. And while you are sleeping, just some other things you can do at home, making sure that you are in a dark, dark, dark room. It's not enough to just put an eye mask on, because your skin can still take in the light. So really making sure you're using blackout curtains if you can't get your room dark. Please, please, please get your phones on airplane mode, turn them off, put them in another room. That's really, really important. And if you are, I know I had a patient a couple of weeks ago who has an elderly mother and so needs to have the phone on just in case of emergency. But I'm like, put it in another room where you can hear it if it rings, but it's not radiating your head. And tilting the head of the bed so you're just about 6 inches, but so you're sleeping on a little bit of an incline. That's going to encourage your lymphatic system, which is the lymphatics of the brain, to drain. And that's how the brain detoxes. We have to be sleeping and letting the lymphatics drain. Otherwise, our brains are not detoxing. And so those are just some easy tips you can do, making sure your bedding is organic, because mattresses, if they're not organic, can really off-gas all sorts of chemicals in your pillows and your sheets. And either sleep naked or sleep in 100% organic cotton jammies or 100% silk jammies. Don't sleep in polyester that has toxins that get into your body. And so just even lifestyle things can really make a huge difference. And when I was talking before about all the intense things in the dentistry, lifestyle stuff to me goes right in hand with that. How we live our life and the choices we make and the energy we do it. And so to me, mindfulness and meditation should be at the root of everything. It's how we are doing things and allowing ourselves to breathe. So if you want to know what the best medicine is, it's your breath. It's free. It's always with you. It's how you come into the world. It's how you exit the world. And all you have to do is take the time to pay attention to it, to learn to communicate with it, to take 2 minutes and breathe, to take 30 seconds, to just take 2 deep breaths really shifts your energy.
That's so powerful. Oh, love it. It's like just like a lot of the lifestyle strategies that you just shared. And you're right, breath. Ooh, we don't think about it so often. And it's such a powerful tool that we can use for our benefit versus, the shallow stress breathing that so many of us are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. Where can we find you? Would you love us to check you out?
And I just have to say, because I just realized
Yeah.
that I don't want anyone, We didn't even really talk about using bioidentical hormones. And I would just like to say that I am not saying that you don't need bioidentical hormones. It's pretty much the opposite. All of my patients who are premenopausal, postmenopausal are on bioidentical hormones. I think they are brilliant part of your aging process in a healthy and graceful way, not only to reduce symptoms, but to prevent Alzheimer's, to prevent cardiovascular disease, to prevent breast cancer, to prevent osteoporosis. So I just want to have that caveat. I don't want anyone walking away saying, Dr. Stills thinks you just have to breathe and sleep. I just think that you need to understand that these things are equally important. We shouldn't just think we can take some hormones and get rid of our hot flashes and we're fine. That aging and being healthy is really a process, and there's a lot of components that go into it.
I agree. And I mean, that's the mindset I have, and the philosophy that I have is that anything that we can do to extend our longevity is what I'm open to. And that is definitely sleep. It's definitely breath. It's definitely the food that we put into our bodies. And, we've got these hormones that we've been reliant on for a very, very long time. They can continue to support us. And it's, everyone's case by case. Your body is unique in its own way, but kind of figuring out that magic sauce for you, I think it's so critical. And so I don't want anyone taking bioidentical hormones off the table ever. And it was just a matter of figuring out how they can integrate into your life. But like, we've got to also address the other components here. Like, you could still be in trauma, and extra dose of progesterone isn't going to shift that. It may help you create more stress resilience. Is not going to heal that trauma piece. And so, that work's got to be done hand in hand.
You could take your bioidentical hormones and maybe sleep better and have stronger bones. But if you're still not eating healthy, then you're doing a disservice to your body.
Yeah. I mean, if you keep still drinking diet sodas, Diet Coke.
Don't do that.
I'm just saying, like, you the progesterone may help with the blood, the bone formation, but I'll tell you what's completely destroying it is that Diet Coke. So I know you're just like, I won't even, but you know what, Dr. Stills, like, there are women listening to that right now, or listening to us right now, and they are drinking Diet Coke. I ain't gonna lie. So it's just, we got to these things aren't canceling each other out. We got to do as many of the things as possible. So that's what I wanted to just share, like, the real talk here.
If you are drinking Diet Coke, I'd rather you drink regular Coke, because those artificial, not that I'm saying you should be drinking regular Coke, but the artificial sweeteners are so much more harmful than for you. And so,
well, I think about, like, all the keto, everything's out there, and everything having sugar alcohols in them, to make up for the real sugar. And I always tell people, like, gut check that sugar alcohol. Like, if you're not, like, gut check anything that you're eating. If you're feeling bloated and awful and yucky, on the other side of that, that's your gut being really clear that that's a no-go. Exactly. And I don't know what bacteria is trying to eat sugar alcohols. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to know which one it is. I don't think there is any of them that are thriving on sugar alcohol, but it's just, we think about, like, how are we stabilizing our blood sugar? How are we creating that flat glucose? And people are like, well, keto treats, like, or like, how do we get our dessert and, like, maintain our weight or whatever. But I had a woman ask me in an interview, like, well, how do you feel about sugar alcohols? And I was like, oh, they're a no-go, for me. And I think a lot of us are beginning to think it's okay, because we are starting to see products with the stuff in it. And so, to your point, diet sodas, the keto chocolates, whatever that may be, we can't I know the real sugar, it's having a profound impact on our body in a not so great way. But also the sugar alcohols and the synthetic sugars, I would say, are an even bigger hit on our system. And so,
yeah, it is disappointing, because I know when I go to the store and I'm like, oh, look at all these keto treats. That's not good. And then I read it and it's like, oh, it's got erythritol, and
it's got erythritol in it.
Then it just goes back on the shelf.
Yeah.
Not doing that.
Exactly. And so, and then there are companies out there that are creating, options that do not have erythritol in them and do not have the sugar alcohols in them. Yes. But yeah, I mean, it's, again, I just wanted to just point out, no Coke or Diet Coke is on the table for me, Dr. Stills. I do appreciate that you're willing to put Coke on the table, but I am not.
I want to make sure I was clear. I'm just saying if you had to choose one, you're better off doing the Coke, but I'm not saying to do that. My patients are not allowed to drink much other than water.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about this on another episode of the different kind of drinks I drink, and it's mostly during the day. I'm obsessed with hibiscus iced tea, and I know that hibiscus is amazing for the cardiovascular system. I also love yummy herbal teas in the evening, getting where you fit in, find that right thing, add some mint and some lemon and some lime or whatever it is to your drinks to kind of give them some sparkle and give them something. But yeah, I mean, you can get really creative and keep the nasty stuff off the table.
Absolutely. And water should be the basis.
In water.
Yeah, I mean, herbal tea, I keep it easy. I'm just like, I just drink water, but herbal tea or even a green tea or putting some blueberries or cucumbers in, you can make spa water is always fun to do.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, just changing. When I have patients who come in who are drinking sodas or diet sodas, just taking that out gives you a huge boost in the right direction of health. So if you are someone who's drinking the diet or the sodas, there you go. There's your challenge from the episode. Get rid of them.
They gotta go. They gotta go. Not doing you any favors. Absolutely. If you want to be hot and sexy, let me tell you, you got to give those up. Okay.
That's
all
true.
right. So now that we've had some real talk around what are the non-negotiables for us, where would you love us to go?
Find me at my website, which is drstills.com. And I do have an upcoming Mastering the Menopause Transition Summit, which is airing September 20th through the 27th. I invite you all to check that out. Dr. Mariza is going to be one of the speakers, so you're certainly going to want to hear her talk. So come find us there. And, I'm Dr. Sharon Stills on social media. You can find me there. And if you're interested in more of when I was talking about scars and the dentistry and the lymphatic system and all of that, I do host a podcast called The Science of Self-Healing, which is for the Bioregulatory Medicine Institute. We're a nonprofit, and we really focus on bioregulatory medicine, which comes over from Europe and is Europe's interpretation of, we'll say, functional medicine. And so something that's near and dear to my heart that I've been practicing since I've been a medical student, and really helps me to help people on a real deep level.
Well, thank you. We'll make sure we have all the links ready to go. I just love the idea that you've got this podcast. I'll make sure to have that link too. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharon Stills. It's been a pleasure.